How did you end up coming here? Because I know you're not a St. Louis native.
I'm not a St. Louis native. I think I found my way to St. Louis U High by the very vibrant Jesuit network of secondary schools. I had served at two other Jesuit high schools in the Midwest. I was a member of what was called the Jesuit Secondary Education Association Board out of Washington, D.C., and really fortunately had the opportunity to serve and see Jesuit schools at a national level. And I think when there was a transition at St. Louis U High, the provincial of this province reached out to me, as well as some trustees, for the consideration of coming to St. Louis U High, which always had such a stellar reputation on a national level. It was a humbling consideration at the time, and but I found my way to St. Louis U High and St. Louis through the network of Jesuit schools.
How would you define St. Louis U High to someone who knew nothing about it?
Gosh, I think St. Louis U High is a school that knows what it's about. I would describe the opportunity that exists here because of the financial accessibility. I would describe an extended community that wants to see the school succeed, a very driven faculty, particularly in their disciplines, helping students really work through rigor and hard work and failing and succeeding to what we would define as excellence. Families, many of whom sacrifice a great deal for their sons to be able to come to the school because they see the value of faith and education that's provided here. And then students, the school exists for its mission and for the students, and the students here are just outstanding. They're so talented, they'll work hard. If you give them expectations, they certainly try to meet them or excel past them. We've been richly blessed in my time, and I know for a couple of centuries, with just outstanding students.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the notable changes that you've seen during your presidency? For example, what's happened with the campus, the physical changes, the curriculum, and the students themselves?
Yeah, I think one of the great things about the extended community of St. Louis U High, so the Jesuits, the Board of Trustees, those who look at the school on longer horizons. When I arrived in 2005, the school was under construction on a lot of the south side because for decades previous, the school had made some important decisions, and a decision to stay in the city of St. Louis, a decision to expand the campus over time and to acquire properties, and then a decision to make the changes that our students enjoy today. So I came into everything that was south of Bertholdt Avenue that a lot of our alums remember as a neighborhood and a warehouse and a set of train tracks for supplies, and it was becoming a baseball stadium, a soccer track stadium, a parking lot, an open grass field. And that came really from many years of predecessors for me, and it was an honor to be able to manage some of those changes. And I think most importantly, to walk out of our school on a spring day and see hundreds and hundreds of kids using those facilities. That was the vision of Vision 2000, and it is a lived reality today in the lives of our students. I've spent time in my time working on things like our Commons, which was a renovation of the old gym, installing our campus ministry offices, the Donnie Fieldhouse that's there, and working on some master planning for the next decade or so of the school. And so again, all of those improvements have come with a tremendous amount of assistance from members of our board, obviously from our benefactors, from our faculty and staff who help plan them. And again, those are facilities that are heavily used by our community, and so that's an affirmation that the planning that went into them was well thought out and put to good use for the sake of the school.
I keep hearing the term men for others. What does it mean to you?
Well, Men for Others comes from a speech from the early 1970s from the Superior General, Father Pedro Arrupe, and it was an address given to alumni of Jesuit institutions worldwide. And Men for Others can sound like kind of a warm phrase that one might translate into be polite, hold a door for somebody, and those things are important. But when I hear the phrase Men for Others, it's deeply rooted in a sense of the obligation a student in a Jesuit school has to develop their mind and heart to serve those most in need in the world. Being a man for others is creating an orientation that our church calls a preferential option for the poor. And with a high training in terms of academic formation, it's to do that not just as an outreach to individuals, but a man for others looks at the structures that exist in society that keep people poor, that create disadvantage, that can harm people unintentionally, and attempting to create leadership to do something about those structures, to try to shape a world where justice that's reflected in the gospel is, we're bringing that to bear on the lives of people in our communities. So I think it's Men for Others is a person who has a heart inclined towards those most in need and a willingness to risk leading to help those people through substantive change that they often can't do that on their own. They need assistance from people who are capable of doing it.
What makes SLUH different from other schools in the metro area?
Well, I'd like to think in the Catholic school system, we share a lot more in common than what makes people different here at SLUH High. I think in that universe of private schools, the opportunity that exists through scholarship assistance, there is no other school, and it's not limited to St. Louis. There are a few other schools that do needs-blind admission, and they don't cap financial aid. So if you're qualified to come to our school, we worry about your ability to afford it as a secondary matter, and that's thanks to our benefactors. That makes SLUH unique. I think there are very few schools, in fact, I think I'm safe in saying that the geographic diversity of our school is unique. We have students coming from 25 miles in any direction, and it seems like the school always has had that. And that's a rich opportunity that's part of what I would call a hidden curriculum in the school, where we have people coming from all different communities in the metropolitan area, and that becomes part of the lessons that students learn. Certainly it becomes the friendships they make where they go to different parts of the community maybe they never were at before. But it's a great opportunity for them to really broaden the horizon of their world. I think that makes us unique. And then I think the academic achievement of the school is certainly top-notch. And so, you know, the formation of the mind it's a holy endeavor. It's not separate from spiritual formation. The opportunity to learn about math and science is the discovery of the world that God created. So the rigor that our faculty has, but the multitude of electives, the multitude of AP programs, the kind of drive of faculty and students to really take that obligation to form their minds seriously. I think there are many good schools that certainly do that across the St. Louis area, but I do think that level of achievement is something that we are distinguished by.
Why does SLUH seem to engender lifelong relationships among its graduates?
Yeah, you know, that's a hard question. What I think about it though is at some level we have to talk about the work of the Holy Spirit in the community. There is something about the culture of this school that's hard to put your finger on. I think some of the things I just answered. I think that people come from everywhere. I think that people come from all walks of life. I think that the school is clear from its first day to its last day that the school has an eternal purpose. It's not a temporal purpose. Yes, we want to have a great education. Yes, we're a college prep school. But our seniors who just graduated chose the motto, Brothers into Eternity. I've gone to class luncheons where guys are saying prayers for their deceased classmates. I think this sense of grounded purpose of why the school exists in the first place reminds people about the importance of those relationships. And then not to be too serious or theoretical in it all, look, there's a lot of fun that happens here. We are a very driven place, but we have the biggest mixer in St. Louis in the fall. You know, we have kids who come cheer at ball games and paint themselves and act silly. We have spirit weeks and just a whole multitude of things where guys who work hard in the classroom together and develop a bond there, they also play hard outside. I think the opportunities in co-curriculars and community service. So the sports teams, we have 19 interscholastic sports teams. You form friendships there, you form memories there, you develop a side of yourself there in terms of learning how to win and to lose and to be a sportsman. Those are memories people make for lifetimes. But that's a lot of words. It's hard to put your finger on that. I mean, I think it's deeply embedded in the place. People are proud to go here when they go here, and they do make lifelong friends.
Who at SLUH had the most lasting influence on you?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. Jesus Christ, I'd say first. The Jesuits, I work for and with along the Jesuits. There's so many good people here. It's hard in many ways to pick. So at the risk of naming people and knowing that we could run out of film, I'll say a few. We lost some great people in the last couple of years that were wonderful to me. They helped me learn the history of the school. Certainly good spiritual men. People like Father Bob Weiss, people like Paul Martell, who I was privileged to get to know, people like Joe Schulte, who was gracious and kind to me, but also helps you just learn what the history of this school is. So you've got administrators and faculty who gave their lives to the place, and they can convey to you the importance of what it is I'm doing. There are a number of trustees, and again, it's probably unfair to name them, but whatever I've been able to help lead for the school, whether it's financial planning, physical plant planning, mission, vision, values, there is a whole host of trustees, men like Tom Santel, Tom Keyline, John Wunderlich, Mark Wilhelm, Father Ralph Houlihan, Al Littikin. Again, it's unfair for me to start naming people because there have been so many people who, as volunteers, give their life to the school. They've been very formative in helping me make decisions and lead and guide. And then again, it's kind of unfair when you talk about our faculty and staff. I have often said, and I mean this in the most complimentary way, that walking in the hallways of St. Louis U High is a little bit like living inside the borders of a cartoon strip. Our faculty, there are these characters that are extremes. They're defined in who they are, and they're passionate about what they do. And so to be able to answer your question of how do they influence me, it maybe isn't as direct as they would have imagined, but certainly indirectly, watching them do their craft, watching them help kids learn how to write and redraft a paper, and hearing a young person say they didn't like it when they were going through it, but now they're so grateful that they had it. I mean, there are so many of our faculty that I could identify that it was the information that was conveyed, but it was more the life skills and the sense of internal purpose they gave to students and the ability for the students to know they could take control of their own lives through hard work, and that those teachers were there for those kids. I can't sit and list faculty, but we've got a building full of them. And then students. I know I give long answers. I think of in my time, I can picture students. I can picture students and witnessing the things that they've done as a high school student and imagining what that could mean over the course of their life. They've always shaped me greatly. That's the purpose of the school. So to watch them get excited about the different endeavors that they undertake, again, it's not fair to name some, but I can think of young men who, through their own leadership in those years from 14 to 18, remind all of us why it is we exist to help them grow into young men. And there's a lot of inspiration that comes from what they do in their time here.
What are some of the more defining moments for you since you've been at St. Louis U High? And what was the most inspiring?
I suppose it's for somebody else to judge what's defining of me. I don't know that I have that perspective, and I'm not trying to be difficult. When I hear that, some of the most poignant moments for me is, we've had 3 faculty members, wonderful people who passed away in my time, and Greg Bantle and Paul Michelson and Mark Takanovich, and these again are men that gave their lives to their students, and we've had some students who passed away during my time, and those are moments where it's important and a grace in difficulty to remind us that eternal purpose, to be in a faith community. Nobody trains you how to deal with those circumstances, but faith guides you and leads you. And so when we had a young man who died pretty early in my time, and his mother asked me to give his eulogy, I don't know if that's a defining moment, but it's certainly a poignant moment, because the relationship is about St. Louis University High School. His father was also an alumnus, and it's not about me. And so being able to take a moment like that and try to reflect the greatness of this community, for me, is a defining or a poignant moment. And then there's a lot of fun kind of defining moments. I've been at state championships and cheered that on. I've been at the heart of a student retreat that students are changing their lives, going through difficult moments. I think the most poignant or the most defining moments probably for me are quieter moments. Moments where a benefactor responds generously without even being asked to take care of the school. Those are humbling things when people respond with such generosity, with such purpose. So it's probably for somebody else to judge whatever a defining moment has been for me, but I just think of the flood of relationships and people that love this place and how I'm humbled to be part of it.
This may seem a silly question for someone like you, but what would you tell parents, prospective parents, why they should send their son here? What are they gonna get out of it in addition to what he's gonna get out of it?
Yeah, so what's a parent going to get? So, why I would tell them to send their son here, and why I do, why I encourage it, is it's about their total formation. I think the simplest way that I put it to our incoming freshman parents is, in the United States of America right now, 50% of the students who start a 4-year college undergraduate degree never finish. It's one thing to be qualified for college, it's another thing to be prepared. And I think our school does a good job of preparing students beyond some academic profile for what it means to be a man. More important than that, I think our student builds on the faith formation that happens in homes and in grade school experiences to certainly try to develop the relationship with God in the lives of students, because that will be the most important thing that carries them through their life on earth and beyond. If you are a parent and you wish for your child to have an excellent college preparatory education that reminds itself constantly of a purpose for which it exists, then this is a great place to send your son. And I think there is a really wide community of adults who believe that deeply, and that's what brings them to school every day. And what do parents get out of that? I think certainly the rich opportunity to participate in some of that, and that's part of the structure of the invitation of the school. This coming school year, it is our parents ministering to peer parents, sharing with them a book by Father David Fleming, who's from the class of 1952, God rest his soul, about Ignatian spirituality. And it is inviting our parents to learn about the faith that's practiced in our school so that they can grow and develop their own relationship. So yeah, there's a great tangential opportunity for parents to kind of drink the blue Kool-Aid too.
In talking to Jim Linares, he made the point that over the years since I went here, which was 64, the Jesuit population has gone from 40 to 4, and yet the school is probably more Jesuit than it was back when I. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I hear those things. I don't tend to lean into that kind of a comment. For me, it almost sounds like competitive when you're talking about spirituality. And And the reality is, I believe there's a picture in my office when the school opened here in 1924, and if I counted right, there were 16 Jesuits on the faculty. None of us really know the horizon of vocations that happen. You know, we're the largest feeder to Kenrick Seminary and to the Society of Jesus, I believe, or over a period of time here recently. So we don't know what that's going to look like. So I look at the 40 Jesuits and 4 Jesuits and the number of lay people and how our roles are defined, not as a better or worse than. I mean, we are all mission-centered, and so it's a collaboration. And for our moment in time, there are fewer Jesuits than there were in your moment in time. But the mission of the school didn't change. And the purpose of what we're supposed to do with young people didn't change. And so it's a privilege, really, to be called on to work with Jesuits to have that. I believe that people love this school from the 1960s, as you said, not because of the number of Jesuits, but because of the palpable experience they had in the school. And that's the same experience we're trying to provide today. And who knows, you know, in 15 or 20 years, maybe we'll have 30 Jesuits again. The Holy Spirit knows what's going to happen with vocations, not us.
Okay. Now, you're the first lay president for St. Louis U High. What are your impressions? What do you like about what you know about this school, and what maybe do you not like?
This is a great school. I mean, there's no question about that. I think to have heard its reputation for many years externally, and then to have had the privilege of being here, all those things that you hear about the school are simply affirmed. You know, it's a highly centered place. It knows what it's about: faith, academics, co-curriculars, friendship, etc., community service. And so being the first lay president, in some ways, I just had affirmed what I knew about Jesuit education. You know, it's a very centered place. And I hope I've tried to contribute and build on the legacy that was before me in that regard. I'm not sure.
Is there anything else you would like to tell people who are looking at this interview about your experience here or the school or whatever you'd like to talk about?
You know, when I think about the school, it's a little bit of a lesson about, you know, either our country or the world or what it means to be human. History is important. There are so many people that we don't even know that sacrificed to make this school possible. And I think with an eye to our families and our own personal histories, and with an eye to all of those people who preceded us, you know, they were pioneers that founded this school. They were people who came to an unsettled territory, parents who sacrificed tremendously in all sorts of ways for their sons to come to the school, alumni and civic people who gave back and made sure that the school existed. History matters, and I think what's always forefront in my mind is to honor those people. You know, I named a few people earlier who are giants of this place, but they had a handoff of history from somebody back in the early 1900s, and Mrs. Backer's husband was an 1869 alumnus, I believe. So when you think about what was happening in the history of our country, and here's a widow of an alum who gifted us this campus, and it was our 5th campus. It was the 5th place this school had existed. History matters, and I think to always be cognizant of how that history ties itself to the 2,000-year history of Jesus Christ, of the church, of the 500-year history of the Jesuits, is really important for everybody in our community to remember, because the bricks on Oakland Avenue were put up for a very specific reason, and it wasn't about math scores and it wasn't about test scores. Those things were important, but they were secondary. And so in my time at St. Louis U High, I've always tried to be mindful of that history, and with great, great gratitude for parents and teachers and Jesuits and civic leaders and benefactors who make the school possible. I said to our faculty at the end of this year, think about the fact that this school is an entirely elective place. The Society of Jesus chose to open a school. They didn't have to. Parents don't get any benefit. They have to pay tuition to send their sons here. They choose to, right? Benefactors who could give their resources to all sorts of places that are good causes choose to support the school. When you think about every brick, every square inch of our property, every book, every program, every opportunity as something people are choosing to do, that's a pretty awesome reflection on how driven this place is to achieve its mission. And it's a privilege to be part of a community like that.